Something was off about 3I Atlas. The numbers were clean, the pictures were not. Astronomers plotted a quiet arc around the sun and called it done. Gravity had spoken, but the images kept disagreeing. The coma leaned. The tail twisted. The dust didn't point where dust is supposed to point. A whisper grew legs. It turned. The careful words from observatories, non-gravitational forces, geometry, phase angle, felt too small for what people saw. And then the chemistry arrived and made everything stranger. Tails know their job. Heat wakes the ice, gas escapes, dust rides the wind and pours away from the sun like smoke fleeing a flame. 3I Atlas didn't obey. In frame after frame, the tail seemed to reach sideways, sometimes even forward, like the comet had found a way to lean into the light. That shouldn't happen unless the eye is being tricked. From the right angle, a flat sheet of large grains can look like a blade pointing sunward. It's called an anti-tail, and it has fooled us before. One vent can overshoot the rest, carving the coma into a lopsided plume. Spin the nucleus, and that plume sweeps the sky like a slow sprinkler. None of this breaks physics. On a sensor, it looks like it does. Multiple observatories, multiple nights, the same defiant posture. At first, it felt like a glitch. It refused to stay a glitch, and the next layer refused to be quiet. Spectra cut the image into lines. Each line is a voice. Cyanide spoke, ominous name. Ordinary in comets. Carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide murmured as expected. Then the metals began to whisper. Nickel lines came through stronger than iron. Not nickel without iron, but nickel louder than the textbook wants. Some said the instruments favored one set of lines over another. Some said the ratio itself was the message. Years ago, a few teams reported metal vapors far from the sun in a handful of comets. Even an interstellar one. That was odd then. It's odd now. It doesn't demand factories. Course changes make headlines. The truth hides in smaller words. When one patch of ice vents harder than the rest, the push is uneven. Every escaping molecule gives the nucleus a kick. Tiny on its own, not tiny over weeks. Comets are leaky rockets. The push is gentle, the effect cumulative. The track still governed by the sun. Orbit fitters add small correction terms and watch the residuals shrink. The path never jumps. The dust, though, follows the gas, and the gas follows the hotspots. Not the ideal orbit. The mismatch is a trick of physics and of perspective. It turned sells better than it breathed. But breathing is closer to the truth. Gravity writes the paragraph. Outgassing edits the margins. That should have ended the debate. It didn't. Something else refused to sit down. Speed. We like to rewind visitors. Take today's motion, run the clock backward, pass it through the star map, and look for the encounter that gave it a shove. Gaia's catalog is our best compass for that. It still blurs when you push it too far. Errors swell with time. Candidate stars appear and vanish as uncertainties widen. We've been here before. Oumuamua's birthplace kept shifting as the math told the truth about its limits. 3I Atlas lives in the same fog. You can trace a long, cold drift through the local bubble. You can list near passes that tugged more in rumor than in reality. You can't name a parent sun with a straight face. That vacuum breeds stories. Maybe it was expelled by a young giant. Maybe it's a shard from a world torn apart in a distant system. Maybe its chemistry is a fossil, a relic of a star older than ours. Each maybe is a door, and behind each door the room is dim. That's how you get the sentence no one likes to say out loud. Momentum with no tidy origin. And just when the conversation should have cooled, a new rumor warmed it right back up. Mars. It was always going to be Mars. We hold that planet like a mirror and ask if we're alone. So when someone traced a path that brushed Venus, then grazed Mars, then slid toward the giants, the coincidence felt like a message. We've seen a real close call before. A decade ago, Comet Siding Spring skimmed Mars so closely that orbiters ducked behind the planet to avoid the dust. All gravity. No intent. Still terrifying. If 3I Atlas threads that needle, near enough for instruments to taste its breath, you can guess what happens next. Telescopes on mountaintops clear their schedules. Spectrographs pick their lines. Orbiters watch the thin air above Mars for anything not supposed to be there. Even the rovers, tiny on that red desert, can look up and see a sky a shade brighter at dusk. The odds? Nature doesn't care about our odds. Coincidence is the universe's favorite joke, but it is hard to ignore the timing. Just as we whisper about fossil textures in Martian rocks, just as we run drills across ancient lake beds, 3I Atlas drifts along the same paths. Random, they say. It still feels like a knock on the door. And what comes next could force a harder question. The careful words never stopped. Papers spoke of non-gravitational accelerations, sublimation models, phase functions. Short circulars carried new measurements, the way a rumor carries across a crowded room but stays formal. Outside those circles, the language changed. Course change, sunward flare, unnatural tilt. It's the same sky through two vocabularies. Under both, one test keeps returning. Timing. Nature flares according to sunlight and spin. Chaos on a rhythm. If the pushes start landing at exact intervals that ignore the heat, you have a problem. If the coma swings like a stepper motor rather than a windsock, you have another. If the light curve pulses like a clock and not like a storm, your eyebrows go up. Add a narrowband radio line and you might start saying words you promised you wouldn't. None of that has shown up because the dust kept lying. Forward scattering makes grains look like lanterns when the angle is right. Change the phase angle by a few degrees and the same tail can switch from shy to brazen. A thin sheet viewed edge-on becomes a spear. Tilt the sheet and the spear turns into a fan. Spin the nucleus and jets trace arcs. The arcs overlap into a halo. The halo pretends to point. Seen from Earth, pieces of that geometry mislead. Seen from different nights with different angles, the trick should wash out. It didn't wash out as fast as anyone hoped. That's why the story stuck. Lack of proof and lack of patience make a strong pair. The object did not aim itself. The pictures kept looking like it did. In that gap, speculation grows. Chemistry didn't shrink the gap. Nickel lines held steady where iron lagged. Instruments do have preferences. Some wavelengths are cleaner, some are buried in noise. But the trend persisted as distance fell. Natural models offer roots. Small, fragile grains can release metals at lower temperatures. Layered crusts can bury iron deeper. Photochemistry can sort what escapes first. Each model asks for data we barely have. The ratios itch because they hint at a birthplace, and we don't know how to read them yet. Did 3I Atlas form in a colder belt than our Kuiper? In a system with different metallicity? Was it baked, cracked, and refrozen so many times that its surface holds nothing like its core? The lines don't say, they tease. So we watch, and we make lists of what would make us stop calling it a tease. Start with pace, a thrust that repeats by the clock, not by the sun. Then direction, reorientation in discrete jumps, not smeared turns. Then radio, narrow lines that do not belong to natural molecules. Then heat, spots that cool when they should warm or warm when they should cool, as if something is moving energy around. Any two of those would bend arguments. All four would break them. Origin refuses to settle. You can't age a traveler by looking. You can guess from its scars. If it's interstellar, its parent system may have been old when ours was dust. If its metals sing oddly, maybe its nursery had a different recipe. If its jets flick hard, maybe it fractured in a close pass long before it ever saw our sun. These maybes matter because they tell us where to point the next instruments. Better polarimetry to read grain sizes, deeper spectra to pull iron from the noise, long, patient photometry to lock the spin. The glamorous question, what is it really, is built out of unglamorous hours where nothing happens. That's the part of the story that never goes viral, and the only part that gets us anywhere. Then there's Mars again. Waiting, not a collision, not a threat, close enough to make us nervous, if the geometry holds. It is hard to overstate what that pass would mean for watchers. Mars is where we practice saying, home, about a place that isn't Earth. We've mapped its dust, tasted its air, dug in its lake beds, argued over its rocks. If 3I Atlas drifts past while our machines are awake on that ground, then for a night the universe becomes a little theater. Two worlds, one sky, one visitor older than our species. Cameras will drink the light. An unexpected spike would be a gift. A quiet night would be a lesson. Either way, the moment would print itself on memory. Coincidence, yes, but coincidence is how most discoveries begin. It helps to remember how illusions die. You change the angle, you change the instrument, you repeat the shot when the hype has cooled. Forward spikes fade when phase angles move on. Ratios settle when better calibrations arrive. Non-gravitational terms calm down when the rotation period is pinned. That's the boring way this ends, with a set of fits that leave no room for steering, a chemical profile that looks eccentric but natural, a dust geometry that straightens out under patient light. Boring is not failure. Until then, We sit with the tension. 3. Atlas will not loop back around. It will not wait for us to get ready. Interstellar visitors are drive-bys by design. We get a window. We build a story from whatever light we can gather. We try not to lie to ourselves. We fail sometimes, then we correct. What matters most is not which storyline wins this week. It's how we hold the question, with curiosity, with doubt, with the willingness to change our minds when the data grow up. That's the quiet promise the sky makes if you listen long enough. So, what do we know? The orbit holds. The dust sometimes lies. The metals don't sing the chorus we expected. The pushes are small and messy, the way nature writes. The path brushes places that mean too much to us to ever feel random. The rumors will not stop. Neither will the work. As the object moves, it writes in motion. Each night adds a letter. Each spectrum a mark in the margin. Read enough of them, and the message becomes legible, or it dissolves into the same old poetry of ice and light. We're fine with either. Wonder doesn't care who wins. When the night of the Mars pass arrives, we'll be there. Not because we expect fireworks, because a quiet glow over a red horizon is enough to make the heart change pace. Because a green blade of tail caught in a rover's camera would be a picture no one could forget. Because a non-event, confirmed in detail, is how science moves forward and how myths move aside. Because what if the non-event isn't a non-event? What if a line doesn't fade when it should? What if a bump repeats when it shouldn't? What if the ratios refuse to behave? Then the story steps out of rumor and into record. There is a last piece people don't say aloud. If a comet can seem to bend the rules, even for a moment, what else can? If the dust points into the light and the chemistry moans off-key, if the speed has no neat home and the timing lands oddly near the worlds we love, the mind goes where it always goes, intention. We are storytellers before we are calculators. We draw lines and name them fate. The sky doesn't mind. It has outlived a million narratives. 3i Atlas will outlive this one. It will cross the plane of our arguments and keep going. It will carry its secrets into a dark none of us will ever visit. We are lucky to have met it at all. And yet the meeting leaves a mark. After objects like this, you look up, and the night is louder. You see how fragile our certainties are. You feel how huge our questions have become. You understand why astronomers choose boring words. They are building a raft that will not flip when the river rages. You understand why the rest of us reach for drama. We are trying to name the feeling of being small under an honest sky. Both instincts help. Neither has to win. So we end here for now, with the object still moving and the story still writing itself. If 3i Atlas is only ice and rock, it is a miraculous version of both. If it is more, the more will reveal itself in the patient shapes of curves and lines, not in the rush of a headline. Either way, the night ahead is worth your attention. If this drift unsettled you, leave a trace, your question, your doubt, your theory. It tells us you were here under the same sky. And if you want to walk farther into the dark with us, stay. The next window opens soon. The silence between now and then isn't empty. It is full of signals we haven't learned to hear yet.